Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A continuation of last month's meeting between the Planning Commission and Appeals. May I please have everyone stand and say the pledge?
The mic's not working.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'll turn it over to the Planning Commission.
Roll call for the Plan Commission. Chair Petoskey's here. Commissioner
Ron Bloom.
AJ Weir.
Jason Berry.
David Brown.
Eric Polkowski.
We have a quorum for the Plan Commission.
Okay, with the zoning board of appeals, may I have a roll, please?
Sure. Clifford Griffin.
Here.
Jeff Atwell. Here. Mike Cindy.
Here.
Eric Frausto.
Present.
Brandon Richardella.
Here.
Absent. Joe Watkins and Vonda Harding.
All right, this is a reconvening of the meeting that was held on December 12, 2019 for a joint public hearing between the Plan Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding adult cannabis use facilities in the city of Blue Island. You can have Attorney Matt Ingersoll kind of give a recap of last meeting if possible, and then kind of the revisions to the zoning ordinance.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. Members of the public, members of both boards, as you recall, we met on December 12th of last month. At the time, the board reviewed the ordinance, the draft ordinance, and had suggested a number of changes. I've worked with Mr. Kapari between then and now, and we incorporated many, if not all, of the changes that the board had brought up. Chief among them, it was in the original document, but clarifying that the adult use cannabis dispensing organizations will be allowed in this proposed draft ordinance in the C1, the C2, and the UTOD zoning districts along Western Avenue only, and then also the rest of the businesses, the adult use cannabis business establishments, would be allowed in the I1 and the I2 industrial districts. One change with respect to the industrial districts was to make the adult use cannabis business establishments a special use in those districts. It's still a special use only or dispensing organizations in the C1, C2, and the UTOD are also special uses only. And as you know, what that means is anybody that would want any licensee that comes to Blue Island would have to come before the boards before they'd be allowed to operate. Additionally, we've fleshed out a little bit and made explicit that there would be security requirements for all the businesses on the front end for the dispensing organizations as well as the rest of the cannabis business establishments. We also, there was a concern about potential sizes of the dispensing organizations. We put a cap on that at 5,000 square feet. There was also, as far as security requirements in the dispensing organizations, there was talk about the parking lots and security cameras and making sure that everything was appropriately lit and safe. So there's a requirement that they install exterior lighting, surveillance cameras, and then also just a catch-all provision that would allow the board to, or the council to, depending on if it's a specific building, a specific location, they could put additional requirements on them to, capture maybe a unique building, a unique situation. So that is a majority of the changes. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time. or if there's anything that Mr. Kapari would like to add.
Not at the moment.
Mr. Ingersoll, I do have one question. I don't believe, I might have oversaw, not have seen it inside the ordinance, but are we allowing for cannabis dispensing organizations to operate according to state statute for hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.? Is that?
I believe that we had slightly more restrictive hours.
Okay.
9 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay. Any commissioners have any other questions regarding the draft ordinance?
Well, I think this is I have not really had a chance to look at the incorporated changes in this, but I know we had some significant discussion on the issue of setbacks for where the locations may be along Western Avenue. That led into a lot of other discussions in terms of, ensuring that we're protecting the health and welfare of the community. And were there any additional changes to the draft ordinance in that scenario?
Not with respect to the setbacks, as far as location of dispensing organizations from Western Avenue. No.
Which is 0 setback from residential neighborhoods. Correct?
Yes, correct.
So one of the things we have of benefit since January 1 is there's been plenty of news programs that have highlighted the establishments that are now selling recreational marijuana. I think that should be a benefit to us as we consider things like locations and security and impacts to the community. And I would hope that as part of this discussion that we'll talk about some of that. Because while we talk about 0 setbacks in a residential area along Western Avenue, that will have a very direct impact on the residential areas in question.
So what is your suggestion?
Well, I think, as I'm looking at the attendees and appreciate that we've got a number of folks out there that have come to provide comments, I think it's important, and I've heard this at city council meetings and community development meetings, how important it is to get input from the community relative to that. So I think that's part of it. Howard, are we going to have an opportunity for public comment? But I think it's going in with an awareness of what a 0 setback means to the areas that these establishments would be in. What are the potential impacts to those areas? And if in fact that would require additional hearings in those areas. We spent a lot of time at our last meeting talking about what that means to the community as a whole with children and kids coming home from school and those kinds of things. So, what the right number is, I think in part we need to hear from our community.
There's no other questions from the Plan Commission or comments. I'd be willing to open it up to public comment.
Not at this time.
I'd like to hear public.
I'd like to hear public.
We'll begin with, can we pull the list to see who's next, or?
Just form a line. State your name and your address.
Good evening. My name's Ryan McQueenie. I'm an attorney. I represent Christine Eliopoulos but I'm also the owner of Midway Dispensary, which is a medical cannabis dispensary on Archer Avenue. On January 1st, we started recreational sales, and we've been open since April of 2015 for medical sales. And our dispensary, which is right by Midway Airport on Archer and Laramie Avenue, is in essentially a residential area. The alley behind our store is all residential. And I'm sure you've seen the stories of the lines outside of the dispensaries over the past few days. We did have lines outside of our dispensary. They went around the block into the residential area. I'm happy to say that there were no issues with our neighbors whatsoever. Everybody who was waiting in line was well behaved. We didn't have a single security issue. The issue really was on January 1st throughout the state, there were not enough dispensaries that were open. And that's the reason why there were such long lines. I think that that argues for Blue Island to consider allowing dispensaries in Blue Island. We've been a good addition to the neighborhood. Actually, the security that we provide in our store and around our store has increased the security in the neighborhood. There's been reduced property crimes in the neighborhood, and we've made an effort to be a good neighbor. I understand there's concerns anytime something like this comes in to a neighborhood or community, and there should be. You're doing your job by having these meetings and asking these questions and making sure that the community's behind it. But I'm here to tell you that after 4 years of being in that community, the community's better off for it. There haven't been any security issues. Whatever security requirements you guys, Blue Island's going to require, the state requires a lot of security. It's not going to be more than what the state already requires. We're more secure than the bank that's across the street from us. We're a pharmacy with security of Fort Knox. And people, it's not like a pharmacy where you walk through with a basket and you pick your products and you go up to a register. You go up to the register and you order your products, and then somebody goes behind into a vault and gets the products and brings them out. There's security guards on duty at the premises, and it's a very secure procedure, and we have not had a single complaint from any of our neighbors about the people who come into our store or anything of that like. So thank you for listening to me, and I can answer any questions you have.
Are you a Blue Island resident, sir?
No, I'm not.
At whose behest are you here speaking?
I'm a business owner here in Blue Island, Deemer's Restaurant, and I have a location next door to the restaurant that I would like to put a dispensary.
And your building, is that a freestanding building, sir?
It is. Well, there's another building next to it.
I know which building yours is, ma'am. I was asking if his
I'm
dispensary
sorry.
that he's currently
Oh, no, it's not.
Okay.
No, I have,
Shares a common
there's,
wall with another
yes,
business?
yes, it does.
There's a couple of Wendy's Cities in Worth. There's one in Worth and there's one in Justice, and they're also in a strip mall situation. Like mine is next door to another building. One is actually a strip mall, and the other one is just attached to another building, and they're not having any issues except too much business.
Sure. Specifically your building, ma'am, are there residences connected to the same building?
Not on my building. Next door there's an apartment, but it's another restaurant next door to mine and a photography.
Again, that's with a common wall, though, correct? And I'm asking specifically because the state ordinance, is my understanding, does not allow for it to happen in the same building, which may pose problems for you.
We're completely separate buildings.
The building to the northeast of us is a residential building.
And that has a shared wall?
Yes,
But they're separate buildings.
correct, separate addresses. But as far as I know, and there's no prohibition about being sharing a wall with a residential, otherwise we wouldn't have been open.
Share a wall. My wall's separate?
No, I'm just talking about my situation.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question in that scenario. How would you handle the lines of people that would be, where would you envision that lines of people would be lining up in the event that you had a dispensary next to DMARS?
Well, the size of the space next door to me that I own is the exact same size as the restaurant. So there'd be room for numerous people in a secure location in the front of the building. And I believe these lines right now are, my personal opinion, I don't know, is because it's new. But they're more than welcome to come around the side of the building on my side where the restaurant is, where I would be watching, where I already have cameras, where I would be paying attention. You know, I mean, it's a very safe corner now, and I don't think that would change. I'm there, me and my family's there day to night, morning to night.
And no, I was wondering more with effects of other businesses.
No,
If there's a line of people.
They can come alongside of the restaurant. Like, so here's their door, here's the restaurant door, and then the whole side of the building. They can go that way towards the alley. They do not have to interrupt the businesses on the other side, the other restaurant or the photography place.
Thank you.
Yes.
I had a question for you. I'm sorry, your name?
I'm Ryan.
Ryan. I had
Can
a
you state your
question.
name?
My name is Bridget Gallegos. I'm a resident here in Blue Island. I had a couple of questions. You did speak about security, and it was open on January 1st, correct? My question is, that was vacation time for everybody for the holidays, correct? And that's away from the school district, correct?
Correct.
So my question is now the kids, it was the first day back to school, so have there been any issues with the kids coming back to school? Any issues with the kids walking back and forth with it, do you know?
Not that I've heard of any issues.
Okay. My other question is, I know they were talking about the zoning area to try to get, you spoke about by your restaurant, correct? I know that there's different areas, when I heard, and not heard, but I read about the parking issues and stuff like that. I know that we have a building on 130th and Western that has been empty for quite some time. I don't know if anybody purchased it recently. I haven't looked into that. Might be an idea for that area because it has plenty of parking and won't interrupt any of the other businesses. There's also one on 119th and Vincennes. There's a big parking space, as I've talked to other residents. So those were just kind of the questions that I had for the board, if somebody can answer that.
On what specific question?
On the buildings.
Parking issues or?
The parking and the buildings, if they would be considered for 119th and Vincennes or 130th and Western also.
On the one on the Vincennes, the ordinance as presented limits dispensing organizations to Western Avenue. So a property not on Western Avenue would not be an option for a dispensing organization.
Okay, so that would.
That corner is zoned C2, it's zoned for commercial, but it wouldn't, and parts of it's zoned industrial, but it wouldn't be permitted as the ordinance sits now.
How about the one on 130th and Western?
That's rented.
That's rented already? The whole, no, the Campbell's building, the old one?
I'm not
The
clear,
Libby's,
actually.
I'm sorry, the Libby's building.
Oh, that's.
That's a zoned industrial, so it would also not be considered for a dispensing organization, if I remember right.
No, the dispensaries,
Well, that's at like 135th.
Yeah, but Libby, so
Libby building.
it's zoned I2.
dispensaries can locate in an industrial building.
And I just had one more question, I'm sorry, board. The other question that I have is, when these dispensaries come in, is it you own the dispensary, correct, the name? And you opened up the?
Yeah, Midway.
Midway? So when they come in, is it only them that is applying for the application to the village to open up? Or does any anybody have a say on, you know, hey, I want to come in and go buy with you into this property? You understand what I mean? So that's one of my questions. And if it's so, is how are we benefiting for it, for our Blue Island? And are the elected officials, any families, or anybody in that are employed through Blue Island a part of this opening with the dispensaries?
As far as I'm aware,
None of us are
there
elected
have been no businesses that have applied for it.
I think the attorney could answer that question.
There actually aren't any applications that have been submitted. This is just getting the regulations in place in the event that someone does apply down the line. So there are no applications, and there aren't going to be any new licenses issued until May of this year.
Correct.
So that would be when people would start applying. But at this time, there's no application on file. This is just the regulations.
So it strictly would be the dispensaries applying for the application
Yes.
solely then? Okay.
Yes, it would be the people who, the organizations or businesses that receive the licenses from the state.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
They're not able to apply for the licenses until zoning has been worked out in the city for which they're applying for the license in, correct?
I think that some licensees, and I just know this anecdotally, but some people already have all their stuff lined up. They have, lease options. Some people have purchased buildings, but then I believe other people are planning on doing that after they get the license, because after you get the license, you have 180 days to open up shop. So a lot of people are doing that on the front end because getting a lease and all that stuff takes time. So it's one less thing to do.
Less likely to be awarded a license by the state without having a specific property picked out in a specific city, or you can apply for the license with no idea as to where you're going to open until you found a friendly community for you to operate in? Is that the gist of it?
I would think that it's, the application process includes probably location, so I think that would be something. There you go.
I can answer it. And just to be clear, I'm here in my capacity as an attorney representing Christine. I'm not here for Midway Dispensary. Midway Dispensary is not seeking a license to be in Blue Island. I did represent groups who were submitting applications for dispensaries on January 2nd. They did not require, and they did not even suggest that you would be better off by having a location as part of your application. So theoretically, every single application that went in did not have a location in mind. Now, some probably did have locations in mind, but that wasn't part of their application. If you get a license in one of the BLS districts, for instance, Chicago, Elgin, Naperville had 47 licenses available, and then Kankakee had 1 license available, and all throughout the state. If you apply in those BLS districts, if you happen to get the license in those districts, you had to place the dispensary in that district, but you do have 180 days to find a location. So what's going to happen is there's probably 5,000 applications that went in all these districts. When they issue these licenses, for instance, the 47 in the Cook County 5 county area, they're going to have to then, once they get the license, go find a location. And some of them may have locations in mind already, whether those towns have approved them or have given them zoning approval or not. They'll have to then go through that process. If somebody owns a property that has zoning approval and one of those licensees wants to come in and use that location, then that property owner will be able to make a deal or lease, however it goes, with one of those licensees.
So your client could theoretically apply for the license and end up opening a dispensary somewhere other than in Blue Island if she so chose. But theoretically, she could if she so chose.
Right.
That's not my intention.
She's not. I just want to make sure I'm not. She's not applied for a dispensary license.
Okay.
I want to be the...
She wants to be able to lease to a dispensary owner, to a licensee.
So you wish to function in Blue Island only for this purpose?
Correct.
Hi, I'm Sarah Brown. I'm the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce in Blue Island. I'm a resident. I live at 12950 Greenwood Avenue. And I'm here, Christine Iliopoulos asked me to come and speak, speaking on behalf of our chamber membership. We just like the boards to consider, the members of the boards to consider just sort of the implications that are involved with this. Obviously, that's why we're having this hearing. But some of the benefits of having a business like this located on Western Avenue within the Business Development District allows us to take advantage of the Business Development District tax. That's a lot of dollars that we can use to improve the community in that area and all throughout town. So it's just something to consider. It's especially when there's someone with an established business that has skin in the game like Christine does. She would be someone that would be responsible, and I think that's something else we should consider, is keeping this tied to Blue Island and in support of businesses that are already existing in Blue Island, if that's their interest, with someone like Christine that has an established business and every reason to want to make sure that if implemented in town, that this is something that isn't going to harm her business or her neighborhood, obviously, because that's her livelihood. And the other thing is, as Blue Island has evolved, a lot of our business district, has evolved too, and is kind of, entertainment has become a big part of what our businesses offer on Western and Old Western. So when you think about neighborhood disruption, I think that kind of applies in different ways for different businesses. Sometimes the nightlife businesses and those hours and the loud music and the parking trouble that might arise from that might be even greater than something that we don't even know what might be the challenges ahead. These lines that you're seeing now, I think, are caused by probably a lack of supply, a lack of availability of this. And I don't know that that will be something to consider, but it is something that I think the residents and the community deals with already with some of the businesses. So I would just caution to consider, take all those things into consideration. And I'm really glad to see so many people come out and share their opinions and appreciate that. Thanks, and thanks, Christine. All right.
Hi, my name is Tanya Rodriguez. I'm a resident here in Blue Island as well. And I just wanted to expand on what Bridget was questioning, because I don't think she came across very well. She's asking if, when we decide to move forward with allowing dispensaries in Blue Island, will we also be allowing government officials to be a part or a partner with a dispensary, so thus having a financial a benefit for it?
I don't believe that is a decision that is made by the Planning Commission or the Zoning Board of Appeals.
No, these boards are just concerned primarily with land use issues.
Okay, all right. So would that be something for like city council?
That would be something for, when the, I'm not sure if there would be.
Well, but if a license was just, like, let's just assume, like, I apologize for keep using you, but let's say Midway decides they want to come in, but then Alderman Frauster decides he wants to partner with him. Like, would that be allowed, or would that be something that would even be talked about, so that the city of Blue Island knew kind of like who's involved? Is there going to be a benefit to people that are part of the government here in Blue Island?
I mean, that's I think definitely something that could be raised. That would be the city council's jurisdiction to put those type of regulations in place.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
On top of that, should Blue Island approve zoning, you'd have a similar conversation or a separate conversation on business licenses and the regulations related to business license, issuing the local business license, and that would probably be more appropriate for that conversation.
Exactly. Yes.
Which is not a conversation that comes to planning and zoning.
Right.
Right. Community development committee or.
Right. Yeah. So we're just concerned with setbacks and regulations specific to the land use.
And as a non-home rule municipality, I don't think you could adopt anything that is stricter than what the state already allows. Wouldn't most of the licensing kind of flow from what the state permitted.
Yeah, the city can adopt, they can license them, but right, they're not, I think there might be limitations on, the license fees and stuff like that.
Okay. Just curious. Yeah, I know it's not germane necessarily, but.
That is an excellent question, though, and I would recommend that that be brought up as part of the city council discussion, because I think we need to be sensitive to conflicts of interest. We need to be sensitive to ethics and so forth, and I'm sure they would welcome that conversation.
And I'd like to add that, like the young lady stated, I think it's at a state level, because every year we fill out the statement of economic interest for the positions we hold here. So,
Yeah.
for the county, sorry.
Well, you are disclosing though.
So at a certain level, we are obligated to let the county know if we have any financial stake in any business here in the city that we serve.
Quick question, Howard. Based upon the map that you gave out this evening, the available locations and the yellow circles that are basically no-fly zones for dispensaries, does her location fall within that? I can't quite tell on the map.
No, I want to add, this is sort of speculative based on sort of an earlier recommendation that Howard, I think he had, where it's 500 feet from a school, daycare, park, library. The ordinance is 250 feet, so that
For
yellow buffer
residential
would be half.
The new ordinance is 250 feet for schools?
Yes. And it also it also clarifies the question about Moraine Valley community colleges. So it does spell out, I think the old one might have as well, that it's primary, secondary, and any private schools. So St. Benedict School would have an impact. Also, places of worship aren't on the map that you saw. So St. Benedict,
Library.
any churches along there would definitely have an impact. I was kind of playing around with Google Earth here to see. I think it's more greater than 250 feet from St. Benedict Church.
Sure. So that the people that are in attendance tonight are aware, the document that we have been provided is from the Illinois Municipal League, making recommendations on the distance from organizations such as private or public nursery schools, preschools, primary or secondary schools, daycare centers, daycare home or residential care home, learning centers, vocational trade centers shall not be classified as public or private. Facility may not be located within 1,500 feet of property line of these pre-existing businesses. Blue Island, in the revised recommendation for the ordinance, is recommending that we change that 1,500 feet from those types of organizations to 250. In addition to that, Blue Island is also recommending that we remove the 250-foot setback from residences to 0.
But there was never a
No, this is
residential
the Illinois
setback.
Municipal League that makes the recommendation in the paperwork provided by staff as to what we should, or any municipality should use for ordinances. It is a sample that they're making a recommendation to us, and then for us to alter it as we deem necessary.
Right.
And what we're deeming necessary is a 100% write-off of the distance from residential, and 1,250 of the 1,500 feet for basically schools and nurseries.
Yeah. One of the conversations last meeting was about what are other communities doing. People mentioned Berwyn. Berwyn has the exact same setback, 250 feet.
Yep.
I have not seen any setback from residential districts, and in a community where the residential district is adjacent to the commercial district, I know where you're going, but that effectively eliminates.
Is the hardship on the
cannabis.
residents that have chosen to purchase the homes here and raise their families here, or is the hardship on the industry and the city to figure it out in such a manner that it's not impacting the residents?
We're working on figuring it out now.
I'd also like to bring up what's currently one ordinance regarding liquor establishments. It says no license shall be issued for the sale at retail of any alcoholic liquor within 300 feet. as measured from property line to property line of any church, school, or home of the aged or indigent persons, or for veterans, their surviving spouses or children, or any military naval station. So liquor establishments are 300 feet currently in the city of Blue Island.
Marijuana has to be less than liquor establishments, is essentially.
I don't believe we're set on 250 feet.
Yeah, sure.
But, I mean, it could go from 250, it could go to 0, it could go to 300, it could go to 1,500. But, I mean, this is what we're discussing now.
Quick question on that as far as the liquor regulations. So DMARS, you guys sell beer, but you're around the corner from St. Benedict's and across the street from Moraine Valley. So that would definitely be within that zone. So how, I mean, that's what I'm saying, is that we're doing that now.
Correct.
And as an owner of a liquor license, I mean, we're very well aware of our regulations and so forth and so on. I think these meetings, of course, are very helpful. I think we're trying to find solutions to problems we don't have yet. And it's a hot topic, of course, and I think as we listen to the financial woes of the city across the board, and then it seems like a lot of this, well, we know that there will be huge economic development issue, huge economic benefits here, that we're trying to kind of cut it off with problems that we don't yet know exist. And we don't want to go recklessly into this, of course, but I also think that we're kind of throwing up roadblocks to issues we don't yet know exist. And I want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank Efron for coming, and folks who are involved in this industry we're all looking at the same crystal ball and trying to find answers to problems we don't yet know exist. I would hate to see this community lose another opportunity by over-regulating. And that's, that's all, I mean, it's frustrating, and I understand everybody's point on this, but before we lose this opportunity by wringing our hands, I think we can come to some things where we're not over-regulating it, so far. That's what I'm saying. I mean, if we're saying 300 feet for alcohol, and we don't have any issues.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, if we're trying to find a setback number, what the rationale behind 250?
Right.
I mean, it was discussed at last meeting. We wanted to look at some other municipalities. We saw the Berwyn, similar in nature, it has 250-foot setback for other, daycares and whatnot. But
These still have.
that's fine. But then we have to decide what's the difference between liquor and marijuana. Do we want to place the same burden on a cannabis facility as we do to a liquor establishment?
Sure.
And I can see a rationale and a link between the two.
Right.
And I think a distinct difference too is, that special use as well. So to say yes and to create standards doesn't say you throw the doors open. There still goes through that special use process where you look at adequate parking, impact to neighborhoods, and there's still opportunity to say yes or no through the plan commission, through the zoning board, and other committees.
It still has to go, like you said, it still has to go through zoning, see if it's even going to pass through us, through them, and if it doesn't make sense, it's not going to,
Howard, or Mark, you might know somebody, is liquor establishment a permitted use or a special use?
Yeah, I believe it's special use.
There's special uses too? Okay. Oh, yeah, we saw one on Vermont. Thank you.
I just want to bring up one more thing with regards to comparing it to the bars, the liquor establishments, and the dispensaries. We have to remember, bars, you partake, they're drinking on premises. This does not happen in dispensaries. You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to smoke around it. So these people are coming here, buying it, and then going home. At the bars, they're staying there, they're enjoying, they're coming out, they're drunk. I mean, yes, we have some issues in town, but nothing crazy. I honestly don't foresee anything happening with dispensaries because it's not happening on premises.
And just to clarify, you can actually allow on-site consumption, but the ordinance as drafted does not permit it.
First thing I want to talk about is the possible and probable Open Meetings Act violation with the way that this particular public notice and agenda was written with the handwritten note added. Be mindful that the Attorney General's office is approximately 4 years behind with rulings on Open Meeting Act violations. That's number one. So, Open Meeting Act violations for not having things on agendas, they're so far behind. They're actually 4 years behind with issuing their rulings. Today's agenda had handwritten notes on it. It's posted outside. It's not a clean, clear copy, as it should be. Just be aware.
So I'd like to talk about that. In our last meeting, which was televised, they scheduled a meeting, so according to the state, that suffices. We don't have to do a special agenda or anything like that.
Okay.
They're noticing that the meeting was held on December 12th, and it was going to be scheduled for today's date.
The other issue is, it really wasn't very public, it wasn't advertised particularly heavily for people to get information and know that this meeting was taking place today. Most disturbing is the fact that as I look around at the board, there's one thing I don't see. Can anybody guess what it is? We have a winner over here. We don't have any females on this board. That's very disturbing.
She couldn't make it.
We actually do.
Remember who'd make it.
Women are the largest voting bloc, and we must be represented. Common sense isn't that common, particularly with Blue Island's planning and zoning marijuana discussions. Blue Island taxpayers are stuck funding all of the nonsense. What is also evident is that Planning and Zoning Committee members don't appear to be as informed regarding any guidelines, making it obvious you didn't attend any of the recreational marijuana trainings. If approved, picture what 8 of the different types of marijuana dispensary, cultivators, craft growers, infusers, and facilities will look like sprinkled throughout Blue Island. What kinds of businesses will find Blue Island attractive and want to come to Blue Island to be here and be a neighbor with a dispensary? You can judge someone's character by what they've done. Think about plasma arc incineration, home rule, hazardous gateway signs, millions wasted on poorly designed, embarrassing Blue Island banners in black and royal blue, and 2 epic decades of a repayment plan resulting from the not one drop of water Jawa debt with millions of taxpayer dollars wasted, and how Blue Island steadily inches toward the decrepit Pottersville. Marijuana possession and paraphernalia are illegal in Blue Island, per Blue Island ordinance. What medical reports have been or were reviewed by the City Council, the Planning Commission, the Zoning Commission, in relationship to the ordinance that's already voted on and was passed in Blue Island, as you attempt to work through what is legally already in place. Blue Island's police department must be significantly beefed up before moving forward with any sort of a marijuana facility. The state will not be providing any of the heavy lifting, any financial assistance with policing. What training has been offered for Blue Island's first responders? As the first Chicago dispensary robbery occurred today. Some of you may have seen it on the news. Some of you might have missed it. The state has set setbacks and guidelines that are in place for the safety of the public and to avoid the potential of a hostage situation. 0 setbacks are unacceptable. Minors are the majority of the students taking class at Moraine Valley Community College, so Moraine Valley should be included in the distance use. DeMars was robbed at gunpoint less than a year ago. That robbery has yet to be completely resolved. 119th Street and the brownfields across from the Marshfield Plaza near I-57 is probably going to be a much better fit for a marijuana dispensary, a craft grower, an infuser, where they can build from the ground up, put in the steel walls and the steel ceilings. Ephraim, you know, I'm very impressed with you. At your tender age, you are quite a knowledgeable young man. Instead of considering putting these craft growers and dispensaries along Western Avenue's already extremely fragile business district with limited parking and a dense residential area. The governor does not want to see these kinds of densely populated areas hyperventilating and looking for these kinds of facilities, and you're probably not going to get any licenses for that area. And the paperwork that you're putting together, most of the information has already been sent to Springfield. They're already looking at it, and they're already shaking their heads, saying, no, this is just too dangerous. Recreational marijuana has been in short supply. What medical reports were reviewed in relationship to the Blue Island ordinances? Have you reviewed any of the material? Anybody? Raise your hand if you went to a training, if you reviewed any of the material. You went. You have to be very careful putting where you're going to put these facilities. They really would be better off in the industrial brownfield area across from Marshfield Plaza with a significant setback, where you're not going to have the safety hazards that you will have putting them along Western Avenue and putting the business next door in jeopardy. It's not a wise decision.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Libby Scales. I'm a Blue Island resident from 12646 Maple. I'm a mother of 2 small children. My son George is here. He came to the hearing. He's 3 years old. He attends Horace Mann Preschool in District 130. I also have an 18-month-old daughter. As a marketer, that's my occupation. I work for an agency that represents a cannabis client, and I've been doing work with Grassroots, a cannabis multi-state vertically integrated operator, as well as their retail brands, Greenhouse and Windy City Cannabis, for the past about 6 months. I just wanted to come to this hearing to say that all the things that I've witnessed in entrenching myself in the cannabis business have proven to me that Blue Island would not only benefit but flourish by opening our doors and our streets and allowing operators to come into our city, giving them warm welcomes. A lot of municipalities are not necessarily doing that right now. I was out on January 1st in Worth, Justice, Posen, and Homewood at all 4 of those locations, seeing the elated, joyful reactions of the people that have, and I also personally checked in a lot of people that have came from all around Indiana, Steger, Illinois, Shanahan. I mean, people are coming from far away to come patronize these businesses and also their neighboring businesses. Just like Ms. Brown said earlier, there's a tremendous amount of foot traffic and benefits from a financial standpoint that I think Blue Island could enjoy at a time where, you know, we've got our hospital closed. We've got a lot of questions about the future of commerce in our town. And as a cannabis user myself, I'm a medically licensed cannabis user, and I have been for a long time. And I have many friends that live here in town that are also. I know that there is a tremendous benefit to cannabis medical patients, as in addition to recreational as well. So I just wanted to voice, as a young family that's living here in town, and as someone who has a pretty decent understanding of the current regulatory environment that cannabis businesses operate in, I think we should And as Mr. Berry was also mentioning, the special use permits, that would be considering case by case as people apply. Putting us at the most minimal setbacks that we can get will definitely help to usher Blue Island into the next era of commerce, and I think it's something that, speaking as a young resident, as with kids, I'd never want to leave this town. Hopefully, you know, we live right down the street from George and Linda's Maplewood Inn. There's a bar sitting right on our corner. As was mentioned before, you know, people aren't going into cannabis businesses and using the product. You know, people are stumbling out of there at 7 o'clock in the morning, you know, drunk. That's not going to happen here. And I think that we need to, that if you're not, and as was just mentioned, we should all do well to verse ourselves in what the world of cannabis consumption really is right now, which is largely medicinal. When I was out there at Windy City Cannabis on the 1st, I mean, there was people who couldn't afford to apply for their state medical licenses that came out in wheelchairs with walkers. They're dealing with cancer, PTSD, they're veterans, you know, people with serious problems that are so elated that they can finally get access to their medicine, which is really what cannabis is. It is not just for recreational partying. It's helping a lot of people curb other addictions and mental illness. So I think this would be a great addition to our city. Hopefully I can represent a segment of our population that I think is growing and we want to continue to grow. Thank you.
I am Kathy Keener, and I have a question. Has anybody in the zoning board or the planning board contacted School District 130 about this, or School District 218, okay, or Moraine Valley Community College? Are they aware of what is going on here? Has anybody here contacted them? How about the parish council at St. Benedict's or the church council at Salem Lutheran? Has anybody contacted them and asked them for their opinions about this? Is there a reason why they have not been contacted? They're a part of the community. They're going to be affected by this. I would strongly encourage everybody here, before you vote on anything, I would suggest that you talk to our educators, our school districts. I suggest you talk to our churches who are going to be affected by this. And certainly, I think Moraine Valley, at the very least, deserves a telephone call from you folks saying this is what you want to do. Okay, because so often with the issue with these kind of businesses, it's not just a question of selling marijuana. What they do is they go in and they target certain groups, okay? They want to increase the number of people who smoke marijuana in their community. And there's going to be a social cost to that. Yeah, we're going to make money, but there will be a social cost to that. And certainly the state of Colorado has seen that, okay? So before you go and make a decision that's going to affect such a big part of the community, I would ask that you bring all the stakeholders, and you need to call your churches. You need to call your school districts. You need to talk to Moraine Valley and tell them what you plan to do, and certainly to get their input before you make a final decision on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to follow up on what she said. Did you go to the business district along Western Avenue? Did you knock on doors? Did you ask the business owners along the Western Avenue corridor for their inputs? Did you tell them what you were planning to do? Anyone?
Yes, speaking for Old Western Avenue, yes, we did.
You
Everyone
did?
was, yes.
Okay.
As far as everyone who's operating on Old Western Avenue that we were able to speak to, and there was about 5 or 6
On Old
businesses.
Western?
On Old Western Avenue.
Okay.
So, to be specific, in the UDOT, everyone was in favor of it. Frankly, ideally, we would like to see, on Western Avenue, we wanted to see it put adjacent to Aztec Tattoo, in that area where you would have ample parking, you have minimal residential impact.
Any knocking on doors from 119th
No.
Street and Western to Old Western Avenue?
No.
To ask Damastes, McDonald's?
I've spoken with Mark Mass just on a personal level.
Okay.
If I recall, he doesn't have any personal issue, but no, I have not knocked on every door.
Okay.
I know Larry Guerretto was at the first public hearing
Yeah.
and came out and spoke strongly in favor of it.
Well, you know, we were thinking pizza and pop. Pot, yeah. But more importantly, you know, what you need to be talking to, you know, are all the schools along Western Avenue. And certainly, as you heard, informing them, this is what you plan to do. How is this going to impact the DARE program? How is this going to impact the community at large? And again, until you beef up your Blue Island Police Department to take care of potential robberies, since we can't get cases solved, current robbery cases solved. If we've got a robbery at the Logan Square dispensary, I'm sure you heard about that. Did they go in looking for the money, or did they want the product?
I didn't read the article.
Okay. Yeah, we don't know yet if they were after the product or the cash. These are things that need to be taken into real careful consideration. And yes, I do think that zero setbacks are a bad idea for a number of reasons. And yes, I think you need to, if you're intent on shoving these things along the Western Avenue corridor, I think you've got to have conversations with the current business owners. And we've got business owners closing up, particularly on Old Western, every day. We don't need to tell you how many businesses are gone. And one of the things people are looking at is which business is going to fall next. And absolutely, Colorado did ask for help from the state with policing. And they were told, no, that's a municipal problem. You're going to have to deal with it and pay for your policing yourselves. So while you're talking about we're going to get, you really need to be looking at some of the other problems that are going to be coming right along with some of the taxes. And certainly, Blue Island, to make itself more attractive, passed an ordinance for a slightly lower sales tax for marijuana. So you're going to attract people from Chicago. You need to be prepared with your police department, your fire department, your first responders. You need to be prepared for that stuff and everything that comes with it.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak?
I did just want to say, just kind of going off of, what Dave mentioned and what you're talking about, talking about problems that we're trying to solve that we don't have yet, and also talking about, we have examples out there, Denver, California, where they've seen increased property crime somewhat. Say, example, and just so everybody here knows, everything we do is a recommendation to the next step. So nothing here is a concrete thing. It does go to the council. It's a recommendation to them. So say it does go, for example, zero setback, goes to council, passes. We do see an increase in property crime. We do start seeing examples. Like, what is the plan that is next? What steps does the city take from a situation like that?
A special use, so if they're granted a special use permit.
Right, so it's a special use, so it's going to go through the planning, zoning, city council process. Not always what gets approved at planning and zoning gets approved at city council.
I'm just saying in the example, I understand all the approvals. I'm saying if it gets approved.
That sounds like a legal question for a legal attorney.
Too, I mean, you have the business license regulations. It would really be that. You'd be violating your business license.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking
and your business license would get revoked.
Yeah.
And the state license as well would be an issue.
I'd like to ask Matthew Ingersoll a question. Since the city council opted us in for tax purposes, this means we're opted in for this process to planning and zoning, or we could opt out? Because I have a lot of people asking me this question on the sideline.
Well, as far as opting in versus opting out, I mean, it's the city has decided to not ban it outright. But there are ways that, just because you are allowing one type of business doesn't mean you have to allow all the types of cannabis business establishments. And something that, you can amend the code to, I know one community, for example, put a moratorium on dispensing organizations by making the rest of the type of businesses special uses, but not the dispensing organizations right away. So there's ways around it.
So by opting in for tax purposes, because there was a deadline, that means we're opting in for this process legally?
Yes.
So the audience has to understand that the council already opted us in. It's not us making the decision, should we continue or not. We already got opted in because of the tax purposes. And I'm asking legal counsel here for his advice.
And I think everyone is here, also, recognizing that as any amendment, one of the things that gets looked at is corporate authorities have determined in the best interest of the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of the city to grant proposed amendments subject to conditions identified herein. And I think those were some of the key points that I heard in city council meetings and community development meetings, is we want to get it right. I heard that several times, because using another term, once you get it in an ordinance, trying to put the genie back in the bottle afterwards is not that easy. And that's why your input is so critical as this is considered, and then ultimately any recommendations may move forward.
Alan, Steve, thank you. I'd like to thank the commissioners of the board for being here with your time. It's very important for our community. I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank all the residents for being up here tonight. I'm concerned about the next generation, actually. That's why I'm here, the next generation. And it's my understanding that Orland Park opted out, and there is also time to opt out if the board council decides to do that. However, I'd like to stop the clock. I'd like to see this go to a referendum ballot. It's such an important issue in our community. I think the residents should vote if they want it or not. It'd take a lot of pressure off the members here, and I think it's so important that the residents should vote in a referendum ballot if they want it or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I can just add that there was a countywide referendum on recreational cannabis, and it was approved, well, not approved, but it was
Thank you for
voted in favor of approving recreational marijuana within Cook County.
Thank you for your input, but I'd like to see the residents here in Blue Island vote
And
no
that,
referendum.
you can look online on the county clerk's website and look at it by precinct level, and every single precinct, if I'm not mistaken, within the city of Blue Island approved in favor of.
Well, I'm asking for a referendum ballot. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Byrne. I am a Blue Island resident, 13157 Greenwood Avenue. This is an impact, it's kind of a new impact. It's not alcohol, but it is drugs in our environment. And I know that we have medicinal marijuana, which has been in the general environment for a while, but often when you have something like this, there's usually an impact study kind of that's done. And I'm not hearing that that's been done, or has it been done? And if it has, is it publicly available that we can look at it?
There's no impact study.
Okay. I would recommend that we do an impact study.
I would suggest you go to the city council and voice this because of financial constraints. Just getting anything approved just for budgetary process, especially for my department, is very minimal. If you want impact study analysis, which is going to take time and money, and it has to go through the bid process, you need to express this to the city council.
Agreed, thank you. But again, I think we should have an impact study on this to ask a lot of greater questions and then be able to compare options and opportunities. So just saying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, that's a good point. We're spending a lot of time talking here tonight about dispensaries, but the ordinance itself includes growers, distributors, and infusers. And so we would be considering the entire ordinance or the amendment to the ordinance tonight. Is that correct?
Police study, the fire study, space study, I mean, there's all those things would go into an impact study because it would impact if our police department, I agree, our police department will be impacted and they will have to go through training. That would go into that impact study of, you know, there are additional costs included in not just opening up a business, but what's the impact to the greater need, the cost for police training, for additional police officers, for other things that we're not talking about today. So, again, it gives a bigger review that should be considered for the city. Thanks.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak?
And Spinoni, I'm a resident of Blue Island for the last 33 years. You know, I think everybody's looking at this, from what I'm hearing, at least people out here, at all the negative things that can happen. I don't think we're looking at all the positive things that can happen, not only revenue. You know what? There's already drugs all over the place, face it. Maybe if we have a dispensary, maybe we'll actually cut down on some of the crimes because we won't have these deals going on all over the place. It'll be more controlled. And technically, I don't think it's any worse than having a bar here. I mean, we need to look at it logically.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Claudia Ramirez. I'm a recent Blue Island immigrant, if you will. I used to live off of Collins in the old Blue Island Hotel there right behind the liquor store, where there were several nights that I called the cops to complain about the noise. And I can tell you one thing, as a personal user of the substance, you're not going to hear cops called about a noise complaint over marijuana or a dispensary. It's just not going to happen. I lived next to a liquor store and didn't like it. I've seen the dispensaries in the neighborhoods of Worth where they're literally across the street from residential neighborhoods and there's not a single issue. This is a zoning committee, period. 250 feet seems like a great idea. It's good enough for a liquor store. Why isn't it good enough for a dispensary? Honestly, to use your words, sir, we're arguing about problems we don't even have. What training does a cop need to deal with somebody who's high? Didn't he receive that in the academy already? I'm fairly certain they do. Again, it's a zoning issue, and I think you guys have got it well in hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak from the public? Any commissioners? Zoning board members?
5 years ago, my house was broken into. All of the literature that I've read has suggested that you can expect an increase in property crime in the neighborhoods around the surrounding dispensaries. Additionally, I raised an 8.5-year-old special needs son. I have been in my head playing out over and over and over again how I'm to have the conversation to him as to why he should choose to say no to drugs, why he should choose to challenge himself to something more when he can stare at a dispensary and a line in front of a dispensary that may include his neighbors, his friends' parents, his teachers, his librarians, his doctors, or anybody else that so chooses to purchase in his neighborhood. How do I have that conversation with my son so that he makes the choice not to when it is normalized in the community around me? Because we've done everything that we can to empower you to sell drugs in our community as opposed to allow me to raise my family in the absence of it. Thank you.
So, Plan Commission members, before you, Howard, I believe, gave a copy, an updated version of the ordinance, which was provided the highlights, Mr. Ingersoll provided the highlights of the changes to the ordinance. I have also provided you, information regarding how liquor licenses are established, or the setbacks for liquor establishments in the city of Blue Island, which is at 300 feet. Or the zoning amendment before you sets dispensary establishments at 300 feet. Any questions regarding the 300 feet within C1, C2, or as special uses within C1, C2, I1, or I2, or the UTOD?
I want to be clear. The dispensing organization can be located in any zoning district, right?
Correct.
Yes.
So those setback locations, or whatever we're calling them, would apply in any zoning district as well, not just C1, C2.
Correct.
I think it's important to note that there is the state law requiring a 1,500-foot setback that's in here. If there is an existing adult use cannabis business, another one can't locate within 1,500 feet of that business.
So I'd like to also make a comment. I had a discussion with the attorney earlier this afternoon, and we were discussing about if a retail store opens up in a small craft grower, and per legal opinion, if that person does, then you forfeit one of the 4 areas on Western Avenue. So keep that in mind. So for example, if I choose to open up a small grower in an industrial zone, and I comply with the industrial, my primary use is growing, but I have an ancillary use of selling cannabis, then one of those out of the 4 in Western disappears. So I just want everyone to be aware.
Just one of the 4 in the city, yeah. I want to be clear too, when we say Western Avenue, does that include Old Western Avenue? Is there a distinction?
I believe it was intended to include Old Western Avenue, but I would defer to I would defer to the board or Mr. Kapari as to if we need to amend the text.
Western and Old Western.
Can we make that more specific for Western Avenue and Old Western, since they are 2 differently named streets?
Yes.
And is there anything inside the ordinance, it's hard for me without doing a word search on here, specifically stating Western Avenue?
Yes, it's in section 5,
number 9,
L9.
on page 10. So there's 4, the proposal, there's 4 dispensing organizations that could be permitted by special use in C1, C2, UTOD, I1, and I2. If one attempts to locate in C1, C2, or UTOD, they would only be allowed to locate on Western or Old Western Avenue.
That is correct.
Right. So the C2 area at Vincennes, where Anchor Bowl is at, Eisenhower probably, over that direction, those are all off limits for C2. There's a small C2 section 2 on 135th Street.
I believe, it is my opinion, I believe that we should expand that to include Ashland Avenue and also to include 127th Street. Plan Commission's thoughts on that?
Repeat that one more.
I'm sorry, well, I guess you could say 119th in Vincennes.
I mean, effectively eliminating the restriction to Western Avenue.
I'm sorry?
That's effectively like eliminating the restriction to Western Avenue, if you look at the zoning.
I'm also looking at, I'm also looking at it as like, why are we limiting the options? Why, I mean, would it be suitable on Ashland Avenue where the, dollar store and the phone stores are at? I believe that that's a suitable place for a, cannabis establishment.
I would be in agreement with that.
You know, and the same thing for 127th Street as well. I mean, are we limiting ourselves to, I mean, there is commercial, you know, opportunities along 127th Street, whether it's, you know, right next to the new Thornton's gas station, or whether it's down by the gaming cafe on 127th and Myerton Road. That's possible locations. You know, I'm not, you know, prospecting or anything like that, but I believe that they're suitable for that location. So I don't think we should limit just to Western Avenue. I believe that we should expand that to the commercial or industrial locations on 127th Street, on Ashland Avenue, on 119th Street, same as Vincennes, depending on how you look at the addresses. Thoughts on that?
Did you also have the corner area of Vermont? What is it, Union?
Vermont Division?
Yeah, the Vermont Division, which is also C2.
Maybe you could add additional Western Avenue and add additional streets.
Yeah.
The C1 also includes Gregory and Irving.
Right.
UTOD obviously includes Vermont Street.
Is it suitable on Gregory, though? I would say no. But, you know, Western Avenue, yes. Ashland, yes. 127th Street, yes. 119th, yes.
So the bigger avenues are
Yeah, the main thoroughfares. So do we need to vote on these specific changes?
Yeah, I would do that
Right.
with the planning commission and then zoning, of course.
Well, when they finish
Yeah.
the entire road.
I just want to read something. I just want everyone to understand. So under adult cannabis dispensing organization, which are going to be your retail stores, under number 5, letter B as in boy, I'm just going to read it verbatim. I want everyone to agree on this. So the adult use cannabis dispensing organization shall not be located within 250 feet of the property line of a pre-existing place of worship, that would be a church, synagogue, or what have you, public or private nursery school, preschool, primary or secondary school, daycare center, daycare home, residential care home, or substance abuse. Makes no mention to a community college, I want the audience to be aware of this, or library facility or anything like that, or city hall.
I was going to address that with the next kind of round. I think we're kind of just picking on locations, then we'll get more of the specifics on site specific, I guess. So I would make a motion that we amend the current ordinance to not only allow on Western Avenue, but also to allow within the commercial industrial commercial industrial or UTOD districts on 127th Street, on 119th Street, as well as Ashland Avenue. I have a second?
And Old Western Avenue.
I'm sorry, and Old Western Avenue.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
How about a hand vote? Can we say a hand vote here? Because you can't tell. We can't tell who voted.
Roll call vote.
No, come on, let's have a hand vote. You guys show your hands.
That's what a roll call vote.
That's what roll call
Roll call
is.
vote.
All right, Cal?
Chair Patoska, aye.
I want to be clear on what the motion is. We're only talking about an amendment to the existing ordinance for location.
We're going piece by piece, so we'll cover distance requirements and stuff like that next. Right now, we're
So this is not on
amending
the
the ordinance just to specify the streets that it would be allowed on. So it's amending to allow it, to expand it from just Western Avenue to Old Western Avenue, as well as 127th Street, 119th Street, and Ashland Avenue.
And I could be clear, you know, so, page 8, if you have this, section 5 is adult use cannabis dispensing organization. And then section L, and then going down to L9 is on page 10. The facility is located in C1, C2, and UTOD districts, shall only be located on lots adjacent to Western Avenue. What Chairman Pataska is suggesting is, shall only be located on lots adjacent to Western Avenue, Old Western Avenue, 119th Street, 127th Street, and Ashland Avenue.
Correct.
That would be added to 5, 11, 9.
Did you say 119th Street?
Yes. That brownfield area is a good location.
That's the best location.
I agree, it's the best location. Because that brownfield area actually is already zoned I-1, so it would be allowed in here anyways. It's not zoned, it's commercial.
And this is not adopting the setbacks that are
No.
in the ordinance itself as conceptual for brownfield areas from that aspect.
Correct.
And that's the dilemma that I have, is because on the one hand, we're saying, let's approve where they would be, but on the other hand, I've got some serious reservations with the other parts. So I think on that basis, I'm going to say no.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes with 5 voting in favor, 1 voting opposed. Okay, now on the next topic of the setback distance requirements. Would we like to go through each type of cannabis establishment, or so should we address dispensaries first and then move on to craft growers, infusers?
I have a couple questions. I think maybe this gets tidied up in definitions. Private nursery school, does that include like and daycare center, daycare home, do those include ones in residential? Because I've seen some setbacks in other communities that are specific that it's a public daycare or whatever the language is. Would that be any daycare? So you're running a home-based daycare, right?
Yes.
I just want to make sure. No, I think that's good, but just want to be sure. And what's the distinction between a daycare center, a daycare home, and a residential care home? I've seen this in others as well. This is exactly Berwyn, verbatim, what they have.
What was that? I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So the dispensing organization shall not be located within property line, and then daycare center, daycare home, residential care home. I just wanted to make sure I understood what the distinction is between those three uses.
Yeah, I believe daycare center, daycare home is getting to your previous point about daycare based in a residence, in a residential care home would probably cater to anybody that, any type of residence.
Okay.
Any type of home that is, caring for, the infirmed.
All right.
Would that include things like some of the halfway houses that are operating in town?
Well, that does say substance abuse treatment center, which is interesting. I think that will follow.
So the residential care home would be for mentally challenged? Okay.
Could be youth in care and the care of DCFS, could be, physically challenged, emotionally challenged.
Do we all agree? Planning commissioners, residential care home?
Yes.
One of the things we looked at in our last conversation was the state's regulations regarding advertising, which includes a restriction on parks, library, and games arcades. That isn't, it's not necessary that any community require all of those, and everybody seems to be, creating their own regulations that they seem fit their community. But any thoughts on that, I guess? And maybe that's where you're headed.
Yeah, so I, kind of like, if we could, I believe we might have to make some tweaks to this, but, as I referenced earlier, the liquor establishment and how that's regulated.
Yeah. So what's missing, what's in liquor that's missing here?
So liquor does not include daycare facilities and drug abuse, treatment centers and.
Okay. And it doesn't include parks either, actually.
Yeah, it does not include parks. So I can repeat it again. So it says, as measured from property line to property line of any church, school, or home for the aged or indigent persons or for veterans, their surviving spouses or children, or any military or naval station. I don't think we have anything else.
Glad we took care of that, yeah. Given that that's liquor, and, they're essentially both retail uses, I'm comfortable with the mirroring that, but keeping the additional restrictions here, the nursery school, the preschool, the daycare, and stuff as recommended. I don't think we need to peel that back. Okay. Myself, I'm one.
So, can you reference the section that is that again on like page 9 or 10 or?
It's on page 8, it's again, section 5 is the adult use cannabis dispensing organization, and it's point B as the distance requirements between specific uses. So what you're recommending, if I remember right, Chairman Pataska, is changing that adult use cannabis organizations shall not be located within 300 feet.
Correct.
Of a pre-existing place of worship, public or private nursery school, preschool, primary or secondary school, daycare center, daycare home, residential, substance abuse treatment center. Effectively just increasing the 250 to 300.
Right. That makes no reference for community college or for libraries or city hall or public institutions.
Correct. And that's consistent with the liquor regulations.
So everyone's planning commissioners, are you fine with that?
I'm fine with it. Jesse, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, motion to amend section 5.b, amend 250 feet to 300 feet.
I second that. Roll call vote. Chair Pataska, aye. Chair Bloom?
No.
Chair Ware? I'm sorry, Commissioner Ware?
I'm still not there, just have to say no.
Commissioner Berry?
Aye.
Commissioner Brown, aye.
Commissioner Polcaster, aye.
4 in favor, 2 opposed, motion passes.
This vote is an illegal vote. It is not on the agenda. The proposed change to the ordinance is not on the agenda. And that is a violation of the Illinois Open Meetings Act. This meeting is a joke. You don't have anything to vote on here. This is just supposed to be to hear public comment. It's not the ordinance.
We are voting on recommendations.
And you should not be voting.
No, it's just a recommendation. There's no vote. It's just,
You actually did, you just voted.
well, no, it's for the recommendation. Nothing goes into.
You're voting. You're not supposed to be voting.
Jack.
This is what the
You have to come to some type of
Illinois
agreement.
It has to be on the agenda. And if you are going to make a proposed change to an ordinance, that proposed change is supposed to be on the ordinance.
Okay,
so the
ma'am.
public has the right to question that.
I'm going to ask.
We never got the opportunity to change, the question that proposed change to the ordinance. We never got that. The public did not get that.
This is not the public comment
No,
period
listen,
meeting.
you went, this is an illegal vote, okay? And you should not be doing it. You are breaking the law by doing that.
As far as the Open Meeting Act goes,
I don't know what he's doing here except collecting money. He knows that you're not supposed to be voting on a meeting like this. He also knows that if you are going to make a proposed change to anything, that has to be on the agenda so the public has a right to know about what's going on before you vote. You shouldn't be doing this.
the board can take action on any items or anything that is germane to an agenda
I'm
item.
going to ask that you please.
You are not above the law. You are not.
No, we are not above law. We properly
Yes, you
provided
are.
notice for this meeting.
Yes, you are.
Thank you for your opinion.
This is a public meeting, okay, financed by the taxpayers, and you have to obey state law, which means that any vote you take has to be on the agenda, and any item that you take up for a vote has to be on the agenda. So don't do that.
These are recommendations to
No, that's a vote. You sat there and took a vote.
Correct.
That's right, you did. You shouldn't have been doing it. It's illegal. Don't do it.
The public comment period is not open at this time. We are discussing these issues.
Before, you're making a horrible mistake.
Thank you very much, Ms. Green. On the last issue, we voted to recommend approval to amend the zoning ordinance from
There's
on
your
section
votes.
5, subsection B, to amend it from 250 to 300 feet.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask a question, because I think that, everyone is trying to do the right thing, honestly. I think that we are charged with reviewing an ordinance that was presented to the Plan Commission in such a manner to present information, both pros and cons of what, again, as was referenced in City Council, to get it right. And I think the challenges there come into, we have a draft amendment to an ordinance that is in place that we're reviewing, and I think the questions that have been raised by the audience are very well taken in terms of having the opportunity for public input in the first place. And so I think one of the things I struggle with are some of the things like the setbacks and the impacts to the community. So my vote no was not to say keep 250 or 300. My preference would be to make it greater than that. And I think that's somewhat what we're struggling with in terms of how to proceed in doing the right thing. But with assurances, and Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your service, I think that we're trying to get guided through the process to do the right thing. And so I think that in your role, that's exactly what the chairman is trying to do.
The most important thing you said at the beginning, Mr. Bluen, was that you had just gotten the ordinance. You hadn't really even had a chance to read it through and digest the information. If you hadn't already had a chance to read it through and digest the information, were they holding back the ordinance?
Ms. Green, this is not a conversation between you and members of the Plan Commission or the zoning board.
Because you've done enough wrong, you've engaged in enough wrongdoing that has cost the Blue Island taxpayers millions of dollars. We're trying to get it right, so you can go ahead and let...
We are trying to get it right, Ms. Green.
No, you're not. Mr. Boyd, were they holding out on you? Were you the only person who didn't get their...
No, well, first of all...
Did anybody else get their...
First of all, clarification, in defense of Mr. Bluen, I am Mr. Bloom. So, we have enough problems with that. But no, I think it was...
Did everybody get their copy of the ordinance at the same time that you did tonight?
Yes.
As far as I know, I believe so.
And these changes made to this ordinance were based off of input provided at the last public hearing that was held on December 12th here at the East Annex.
So just clarity, we had...
You voting on something that none of you have really had a chance to read through and digest, is what I'm hearing you all say.
The Plan Commission is trying to make a recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals and to the City Council.
Just for clarity, a month ago, we went through the ordinance, and there was a few revisions that we discussed today's meeting. So that's kind of what we're discussing right now. But we went through the entire ordinance in December 12th.
So why wasn't that on the agenda tonight?
because we're doing December 12th agenda.
Like it should have been.
This is a continuation.
It's a continuance.
The committee, the Plan Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Original agenda.
Okay, thank you very much.
I mean, this is just an illegal vote.
You can keep on calling it what you'd like.
Well,
We are going to continue with our businesses.
Mark, you were gonna get water from Whiting. Where is it now?
Thank you very much, Ms. Green. Moving on to the other issues that we need to address as a Plan Commission this evening. We have addressed the street thoroughfares. We have then voted on changing the distance requirement for dispensary and organization from 250 to 300. Now we will move on to, if we want to look at cultivation centers next, if we want to look at craft growers, if we want to look at diffusers next, we can move on to that.
If I may.
Please.
I just want to make sure, so we're moving on from the dispensaries and the setback discussion?
Yes.
From residential areas? Will the residents have an opportunity when a business comes in and wants to open, to provide input with a zero setback?
Yes, because it'd be a special use,
In all cases?
in all cases.
Right, it would be a special use, and the attorney took my suggestion about the 250-foot abutter notification letter that the applicant has to provide to the surrounding businesses or residents. Is that correct, Mr. Ingersoll?
I believe, yes, and I believe that that's already a requirement in the code for an application.
So that's
Would you
going
please
over, that's
just
going over
clarify
and
what you
beyond-
just said?
That's going over and beyond what we're required by state law. State law says we have to advertise in a local circulating newspaper, which we're doing. It has to be advertised on bulletin boards or website, which we're doing. And this one, under the special use, I suggested in the last meeting, for if there's a particular place that's being advertised for a dispensary, then that property owner has to notify by letters the surrounding businesses or residents of 250 feet from the property lines of where the business is proposing to go. That's usually going over and beyond. This is what you see in Chicago, not in Blue Island. When a person comes here for a special use, they only advertise in the newspaper, which I do it on behalf of the applicant, and I also do it on the website with the participation of the city clerk and on the bulletin boards. So we're going one step extra with the notification process.
So if we're going one step extra, can we expand that circle of where the notifications would be distributed to?
It depends on how.
I don't know what's magic about 250 feet.
Houses in any direction.
Yeah, that's what the state requires for home rule communities, which we're not. We're going over and beyond the requirements.
Thank you.
And that would include not just a dispensing organization, but any cannabis business, correct? Because they're all special, they're essentially they're proposed to all be special uses. So it wouldn't be limited to just a dispensary. Any adult use cannabis business would be required to have the sort of expanded public notice. So for craft grower, I see 1,000 feet. Cultivation center, 1,000 feet. We already talked dispensing organization, 300 feet. Infuser, 1,000 feet. Processing organization, 1,000 feet. Transporting organization, 11,000 feet. Are all those uses permitted in all of our business districts or commercial districts? No, okay. Those other uses are only permitted in I-1 and I-2. I just wanted to confirm. So that would include areas east of Vincennes, along Wyerton, and much of the property south of 135th Street. in general, in those districts, you don't find schools and places of worship and the rest. Most of those are in residential districts, although there are some exceptions. The other uses as well, the craft grower, cultivation center, infuser, processing and transporting does have a residential requirement. And it's 1,500 feet from anything zoned for residential or used for residential. So that would provide some limits on that part of Western Avenue, south of 135th. I know there's some homes there, some homes near Wyerton, obviously along Vincennes. You provide a significant buffer there.
Where are you reading from?
Page 7, 3.
Yeah, essentially, 3A and 3B as the setbacks for craft grower. 6A and B as the setbacks for, actually the infuser has an extra setback of 250. ABC, there's setbacks there. Processing organization, 7, A, B, and C, and 8, A and B.
So on these distance requirements, we don't have a distance requirement for residential for cultivation centers?
No, it's there. It's
Oh, for residential? Was there one of them, or?
It's 1,500 for a cultivation center. I'm sorry, yeah. That's 4B.
You know, if I may make a suggestion or a thought, and because, you know, again, it's my belief we're trying to do the right things here. And we had good conversation on the meeting on the 12th. And we've got an incorporated changes in the document before us. But I think we're struggling a bit in moving from one area to another area with questions, and at least I'm having a bit of a trouble keeping up with it. And the document that's before us essentially, and again, thank you for doing this, but it appears every single line looks like it has changes to it. And that's okay, but I think it is a challenge to sit here tonight and go through it without going through it line by line to make sure that we're all in understanding of what those changes were, respecting that they've incorporated our discussion items. And I think that that's what at least I'm struggling with in having a position to be able to not only listen to the public comments, you know, and have the public be aware of what we're doing. You know, I mean, I'll offer it up to the other commissioners from that perspective, but again, in the spirit of trying to get it right, I think we're going to need to take the time to do that. And if that means that we do that in a manner to go through it, you know, item by item tonight, and we'll work through it, you know, I think that's an option that we have. But going back and forth on the different aspects of the ordinance is a bit challenging.
Commissioner Bluen, you're proposing to have another,
I think in the interest of the comments that were said here tonight, and properly digesting this so that we can take an appropriate vote, it would be, I think, in the best interest to have another session. But I'm only one voice here.
What was inappropriate about the vote? I'm sorry, this is new to me. What was inappropriate about the vote that's being taken tonight?
Nothing.
Oh,
Nothing.
I was
No.
just checking.
nothing.
Yeah, okay, just checking. That's what,
It was not on the agenda that long.
that's what my lawyers were saying too, that everything has been, that's not so, what's being said. That there, I don't know about the notifications, I'm not a lawyer, but I was just curious.
I'm sorry.
I mean,
No,
what's not-
you're
what's
fine.
not appropriate? I don't get it.
Mr. Blue, I mean, you can go ahead and make that motion to, what would you, what's your motion?
Well, I guess I would make a motion that we schedule a follow-up meeting of the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board. I think it works well to have us together to move this forward in such a manner that we can ensure that we've got the appropriate time to go through the changes in the proposed ordinance, consider comments that have been made from the public, and then move forward. I don't know what that time frame would be. I mean, that's a scheduling matter.
And now it doesn't change our timeline with the state at all, right? We're not under a gun to have a vote tonight in terms of meeting a specific state requirement, correct?
What would a third meeting look like of the exact same thing?
I think he's suggesting that we have this all written. If we've made all these changes, is that have it all written down? Am I correct?
Yes, I mean, we
If
have
we're
it
making
all
some changes
written
right
down.
now, that it's all written down so we can digest it, all written down so we can see what those proposed changes are before we vote on it.
So all the votes that were taken previous are,
No,
That's not a vote on the ordinance.
There was no
There's-
second to, go into recess or anything like that. There's no new date.
The board's a recommending body, and they were using a vote to gain consensus on the proposed changes. So no action was taken.
so now we just stay, we come back to this a third time, the same situation?
We have-
And then move-
That has not been decided yet,
Oh,
whether or not
okay.
we're
I
going to
don't- Like I
reconvene.
said, I'm sorry, I don't know how this works, I'm sorry.
I was just trying to get a commissioner's
Sorry.
understanding of
Thank you, sorry.
how he suggests we should move forward. Commissioners, on these other establishments, the craft grower, the infuser, the cultivation center, do we have any questions or concerns, suggested changes on the distance requirements that are proposed in the zoning ordinance before you?
Mr. Chairman, these could be amended on a case-by-case basis, though, correct? Depending on, craft infuser wants to come in, says this is the proposal, but he's 1,100 feet.
Yeah, I believe, and maybe the city attorney can, or legislative attorney can clarify on this, but yes, a city ordinance can be amended at any time in the future.
And these are all special uses.
Correct.
So
They could end up turning everything into a permitted use and allowing it as is.
just wanted to get that going.
But
So
correct
that
me
it
if
is,
I'm
so
wrong,
it is,
here's all that the
it is a
city
breathing
council
document. It can be abridged.
Make
Okay.
any changes a
Yes.
year from now, 5 years from now on distance requirements, special use versus permitted use,
The number of licenses.
number of licenses.
Well, not only that, by every case that comes before you, even though it's stated here in the amendment, every case that comes before you, you have to listen to all of those ramifications of that particular facility.
Correct.
Yes,
So
that-
even though you might be able to adhere to it here, but it won't fit the parcel of land that they want, or a property that they want to use for that particular one, which means you won't grant it to them, and then we won't grant it to them.
Correct.
So that's
Yeah.
where it all really ends up.
Commissioner Barry, do you have any comments, suggestions?
Yeah, I'm definitely concerned about, the mention, has the school been contacted, have the churches been contacted, social costs? I think that's really significant. It is important to get that input. And obviously, as a recommending body and a board and as a bunch of volunteers, that's not our role, but I would encourage elected officials to talk about these issues because they're significant and, we should be thinking about that. That was a really, really great point, But I also heard, a lot of folks in favor too, and sort of expecting us to do our job. By rejecting an ordinance, we're not saying you can't consume cannabis next door to a church if you live next door to a church. The hand that the state dealt with that is that it is now legal. And people in Blue Island came up today and said we're using it as a medical user. They've already been using it. So it's for me, a commerce issue, an economic development issue, but I don't want to reject the social costs that do come with it. Unfortunately, we have been foisted, a bill of goods and have to deal with it somehow. I think, the ordinance as recommended is a good start for me. I know we just recommend to the zoning board. The real debate happens at the city council or their committees, since they would approve any ordinance. There's nothing in the zoning code now that allows these uses in Blue Island. My take is to recommend to the zoning board and move the process along. This is the third meeting I've attended on this. I was at the one where we're speaking directly to the aldermen. We had our meeting in December at the Plan Commission, and we decided to come back to this meeting because we were upset that there weren't enough people at that meeting. And we wanted to get that public input, and I think, you do the best you can, but other people not everybody wants to show up and say, I support pot, or I'm opposed to pot, or whatever it is. Other people just expect, to do your job. So, we certainly tried to get significant public input. We got more public input today than we ever have, and so I'm thankful for that.
So we would keep the distance requirements for all of the other cannabis-related establishments as they are currently in the draft ordinance?
I'm okay with that. I mean, 1,000 feet is significant in a community as dense as Blue Island. And the grower obviously includes residential. Some of these include residential sort of distances as well. And this is not saying that any of these are allowed by right. Everything still remains a special use. If there was an application to the city, they would first have to meet the minimum requirements here, and then go through the special use process and meet all the requirements for health, safety, parking, ingress and egress, all the conditions that you find in a special use permit.
So if the two issues that we already made recommendations on, those are the only two changes that we're recommending this evening, we would not have to make any additional recommendations.
No, but I mean, I would ask the attorney, should that be included in, as you're saying, we're sort of did those votes to seek consent and see where the board was at. If we make a motion to recommend, do you recommend, is it with conditions or with amendments to the zoning board? What's the proper?
It would be a motion to recommend approval subject to the amendments, and I would just repeat the amendments in making the motion.
Thank you.
So I like to, I'm like looking at this, I guess under number 9.
For dispensing organizations?
Under additional requirements,
Page 12.
page 12.
Yeah.
This is for the attorney. Last sentence, a special use applicant shall submit additional information as required by the city during special use process. Can we have something there that says the 250-foot abutter notification or mail notice or service by mail, postal mail for the special use? Because I think that would be the right section to put it. Right? Additional requirements, number 9, last sentence.
Yes, yeah.
Because the first part talks about the building permit process. Last sentence of that paragraph talks about the special use part. So I like for the audience to be aware that, you know, whoever is going to be coming in front of planning zoning will have to do that notice as an extra. I take it as a non-home rule. This is not excessive.
No, it's not. And are you sure that I don't have the zoning code in front of me. It doesn't already require 250
No.
feet? No.
I know it doesn't.
Then, yeah, that would be, additional requirements would be fine to put it in there, that certified mail.
Right, certified
Notice by
mail.
certified mail.
Will it leave the language? Notice shall be served by certified mail to residents or to all property owners within 250 feet.
From every property line. And staff will verify that and document that, like I've done for other communities in the past, where I reviewed the information from the township. If there's 15 properties are noticed. I have either the certified mail or the return to sender receipt. It's in the master folder, and if anyone has any question about the legality, that could be brought up during the planning and zoning process. And what I've done was planning and zoning is going to be on the same night, so it'll be one notice to both. Let's say 6:30 planning, 7:30 zoning. It's no more 2 separate nights. Planning on Thursdays, the first Thursdays of the month. Zoning the second. Sometimes the second could be the third. It depends on the calendar, and that created confusion in the past. So the first Thursday for planning and zoning for any special uses.
So the intent would be then on the notification for those residents or businesses that want to speak, they would come to the meeting and express their opinions at that point.
Right, so there's no excuse. I didn't see the newspaper.
Right.
30 or 15 days, depends how it's advertised, or it wasn't on the bulletin board, or it was on the website, but it wasn't properly seen. The interested parties would have something in their hands, and they would come, speak for it or against it, and if they wanted, they could come and see staff about the particularities of the case. So then they can make a educated opinion or reference or what have you at the podium.
So should we make, I mean, I'm in agreement with the 250-foot notification requirements.
Certified mail.
With certified mail. So I'll make a motion to, I mean, wherever the city attorney deems appropriate within the zoning ordinance, whether it be under section 9 additional requirements, stating that, you know, the additional requirements must include notice within 250 feet with certified mail.
Right, for both planning and zoning.
So you're saying, I got here, notice shall be served by certified mail to all property owners within 200 feet of all property lines?
250 feet.
250 feet of all property lines of what? The applicant property, the subject property?
The subject property. Because the property could be the owner or it could be the applicant.
Yeah, okay.
So subject property boundaries.
Okay. I could include that in.
So it's a big circle rectangular around that area. Kind of similar to what we have here. The yellow areas, that's a buffer.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important aspect. The only other question I would have with that, would there be a time sensitivity to when the letters would get sent out to give sufficient
It would
time?
follow the state requirement, no more than 30, no closer than 15 days.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you could add that.
So do I have a motion to make that amendment, third amendment to the zoning ordinance?
A motion.
Second? Roll call vote. Tosca, aye.
Again?
This is confirming for consensus.
Confirming for consensus, I would say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All in favor, motion passes 6-0 for recommendation to the zoning board, city council on that amendment. So the fourth motion would be to, unless we have any other issues, we would, do you have something to say?
No, I can make a motion including those three. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so you want to go, yeah, go ahead and make a motion to, the motion would be to accept the zoning ordinance as is with
Yeah,
the three amendments that were recommended by the
I
planning
agree
commission.
with that. So a motion to recommend to the zoning board of appeals an ordinance of the city of Blue Island, Cook County, Illinois, amending the zoning ordinance of the Code of Blue Island, Illinois regarding adult use cannabis with the following amendments to be considered by the ZBA. That in section 5B, an adult use cannabis dispensing organization shall not be located within 300 feet of the property line of the uses here. That in section 5L10, I'm sorry, 5L9, facilities located in the C1, C2, and UTOD districts shall only be located on lots adjacent to Western Avenue, and adding Old Western Avenue, 119th Street, 127th Street, and Ashland Avenue. And the final amendment would be to recommend to the ZBA under additional requirements, section 9, adding a final sentence, notice shall be served no more than 30 days and no less than 15 days by certified mail to all property owners within 250 feet of all property lines of the subject property.
I second that motion. Roll call vote. Tosca? Aye.
Really?
Commissioner Bluen?
I would like to preface my comments with recognizing the work that went into the ordinance and the changes within the ordinance, and I do appreciate that. I remain concerned that this is a significant ordinance for the city of Blue Island, for the residents of the city of Blue Island, that it would be appropriate to have additional outreach, as was referenced tonight, to include schools and parish communities and so forth, to ensure that as we are charged to get it right. And while I recognize that this is something that is before many communities, until that happens, I will vote no.
And I do still have concerns with the setbacks, but since that was already passed, for the rest that's being presented, I'll say aye.
Commissioner Bluen?
Aye.
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 5 in favor, 1 opposed. Motion passes for recommending to the zoning board and city council. That's all for
All right, Cliff, now it's yours.
Okay. I have a motion from someone to accept the recommendation from the planning commission with its alteration.
I'll make a motion.
Seconded? I'll second it. Roll call vote.
Cliff Griffin? Yes. Jeff Atwell? No. Mike Cindy?
Yes, it's special use.
Eric Krause?
Yes.
And Brandon Richardella?
Yes. Okay, with that, it passes. Now, are there any concerns or questions that you have about what you've heard or
I think 250 feet with regards to certified mail notification is 2 to 3 houses in any way, depending on lot layout, and that this type of business is going to impact much greater than that. I feel like the burden on the city is greater than 250 feet notification to the residents in the surrounding areas. I would say that at a minimum, double that is appropriate. I think that the lines that this is going to create, and I've driven by some of the places since January 1 to see exactly what we're up against. There are people who are blocking off, they're forced to have employees blocking the alleys so that cars don't go into the alleys and park behind them. We have lines anywhere from 50 to 200 people outside. That's going to seep into the neighborhood, and not just in the facilities. They're going to be parking in the neighborhood, and they're going to be walking around in the neighborhood.
Howard, I have a question. I know this is after the fact that we voted, but typically, do you include right-of-way? I know it's sort of customary to exclude right-of-way from the 250 feet. I know we didn't spell it out, and it doesn't require it, but I think most communities in practice use probably closer to 400 feet to exclude right-of-way.
Well,
But I see your
more
point. I think
notification to the community is better than less.
I absolutely agree with that.
Okay, we accept it there. If you feel that it should be greater, that's your choice to make a recommendation for it, and you can vote on it, and that to go into the amendment to the city council.
If possible, I would like
I would
that we change
double
that
check with the
to
attorney.
500 feet as opposed to 250.
Okay, anybody second?
I'll start.
Okay, roll call.
Cliff Griffin?
Yes.
Jeff Atwell? Yes. Mike Cindy?
Yes.
Eric Krause?
Yes.
Brandon Richardella?
Yes. Okay, so with that being increased to double that, are there any other concerns or questions that you have for it?
Okay,
Do you know when the city council will take this up?
wait, one question. So we doubled it to 500 feet, the certified mail?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Because I was looking at something else. Who proposed the motion?
I did.
Jeffrey. Right? Atwell.
Richard, second.
Cindy seconded.
Cindy seconded, okay. And everybody voted unanimously?
Yes.
5-0. Okay. Just, all right.
Okay, with that in mind, any other concerns? Does anybody want to make a motion to send this amendment on to the city council?
Can I interject?
Sure.
Could we go over the findings of facts for the zoning board of appeals in approving this?
Would you mind reading them to us?
Sure. So the first one is existing use of property within the general area of the property in question. So the findings of facts, recommendation of the zoning board are the following. Existing uses of property within the general area of the property in question. The zoning classification of the property within the general area of question. The suitability of the property in question to the uses permitted under the existing classification. The trend of development, if any, of the general area of the property in question. Projected uses of property as indicated in the comprehensive plan. So It's letter A, B, C, D, and E. So basically what the findings or facts are alleging to is, will this use or this change, the adult cannabis, will impact the surrounding areas? So, for special uses, the zoning board will hear this. That the establishment, maintenance, and operation of the special use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, and general welfare. That's the first one. The second one is that the special use will not be injurious to the use or enjoyment of other properties in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair the property values within the neighborhood. Letter C, that the establishment of the special use will not impede the normal and orderly development, improvement of the surrounding properties for uses permitted in the district. Letter D as in David, that the adequate utility, access, roads, drainage, and necessary facilities have been or are being provided. The adequate, letter E, the adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress and egress, so designed to minimize the traffic congestions or streets. And letter F is that the special use shall in other respect conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which is located, except as such regulations may in each instance be modified by the city council pursuant to recommendations of the zoning board of appeal. So how I would do it is I would read each one again, and then we would just say that we're trying to make it less detrimental with the certified mails. We have expanded the setback requirements and just tackle each one like that.
Okay, so would you mind reading?
Okay,
And then
so-
what we'll do is we'll take a vote on each one.
Yeah.
Do you need to? first?
No, we don't
This
need
is
to
a
do
text
that.
amendment.
Yeah. I think it's, I don't think that's necessary.
I just want to, as a special use, just go.
Well, it's not a special use, it's
I
a
know
text
it's not a
amendment.
special use.
You know, on each individual case, we have to go through those standards anyway.
Right.
So just by stating that it's a special use, those standards are already in place and have to be read on each case anyway.
Okay, so if the zoning board feel comfortable that what we propose tonight, by modifying the ordinance, the proposed text amendment for adult use, we're trying to alleviate the hardship on the surrounding properties. We've looked at setback requirements, we've expanded, we have changed the location of the dispensaries in question from one avenue to several places in the city. We've also added part of the special use for each individual application has to go through a certified mailing. Planning commission voted for 250, zoning board upped it to 500 feet. So we looked at the physical conditions of these dispensaries, on-site parking, secured area, lighting, security. Am I missing something else? Anyone? We looked at the setback, we looked at the uses, we looked at the varieties, we looked at the locations, the areas. Hours. Hours are more restrictive than what the state requires. Anything else? So we have this as a record. If it gets challenged.
I think you have covered all. Covered all. So do I have a recommendation from someone to either accept or reject?
I'll make the recommendation to accept.
Second.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote. Cliff Griffin? Yes. Jeff Atwell? No. Mike Cindy?
Yes.
Eric Frosto?
Yes.
Brandon Richardella?
Yes.
With that,
5-4-1.
Yes. We'll send it on to the city council. Any other questions?
So these recommendations go to the city council, but you had suggested they decided to hear it, or maybe Howard, in committee first?
I would like to bring it to community development, but it's going to be too quick.
Okay. So for people that want to stay engaged with the process,
Right. They could
the
participate.
recommendations that were made here are going to be next heard by the community development committee.
Right.
So look
because
for their
that's-
agenda.
Right, because that's the new thing. So in today's advertisement or the agenda, I did put discussion and approval for the adult use cannabis for the community development committee. Since we don't have the minutes and we don't have a lot of information, I'll still bring it to community development to start going over the discussion process of all the amendments that were changed. It's going to probably go back to them, hopefully with the minutes, with the findings of facts, which I kind of spoken about, and everyone agreed. We looked at different measures to make it more tolerable for the residents and commercial businesses.
So is it on an agenda for community development
Yeah,
committee already?
I put it on.
So for
Being
this?
conservative, yes.
Okay. That's what, Wednesday?
Wednesday, the 8th.
Okay.
7 p.m. back here.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for making my closing statement for you, sir.
In front of the TV, yes.
All in favor to adjourn?
We just open it up to public comment, just outside of the, just one more time for the.
Public comment.
I'll turn it back over to the planning commission.
Is there anybody else wishing to address the planning commission or zoning board through public comment process? Ms. Green, come on up.
Question. How many of you have completed your Open Meetings Act training within the last 365 days? It's something that you have to do annually. Raise of hand. Anybody? Nobody. Very scary. That's something that you should be doing every 365 days. You've got to complete your Open Meetings Act training. Best part about all this? The cameras. Thank you, sir. You've done a marvelous job. Anybody who wants to look at the Open Meetings Act training so you can see anything you vote on has to be on the agenda. Absolutely free to see it. I'll show it to you. The gentleman who was sitting over there, before I could even finish speaking, he's like, "You're absolutely right. Here it is," and held it up. And Attorney Matt Ingersoll, please do your very best to advise and guide these folks along the way. Your Open Meetings Act training as commissioners on the planning and zoning and committees needs to be completed every 365 days. So it's not a one and done. You got to do it every year. You, Mark, should know that.
Very much, Ms. Green.
You had proposed changes to this ordinance that you did not present to the public. It's not on the city website, the public didn't know about it, and the people here did not see those proposed changes until tonight. If you want to have any kind of credibility, okay, with us, you have to be open and honest with us, and you failed tonight, okay? You people failed the community for what you did. Okay, if you are doing something and you think it's such a good idea, you have no problems about putting it on the website, and you will have no problems about letting the public know what you're going to do. You didn't even have it on the agenda. We had no idea that these proposed changes were going to be made, and on top of that, you went and you voted on them, which isn't on the agenda either. So, I mean, you leave me with no choice except to file a legal complaint, and I'll call the Citizens Advocacy Center tomorrow, and see if I can get an attorney to take the case. But we will be in contact with the AG's office tomorrow and tell them that this was a fraudulent meeting and should not have happened because of the way it was conducted. Okay, I don't know why you people think that this was a good idea, because it was not, and I am ashamed of you.
And if you weren't informed that you should be completing your Open Meetings Act training by the mayor's office.
Is there anybody else that wishing to address the
Commissioner or
Planning Commission or Zoning Board?
Zoning Board Commissioner, you should have been.
We'll let the city attorney know.
He's already been informed.
I do have one question. For the community development meeting that's going to be taking place on Wednesday, so that's open to the public, right? And that's an opportunity to present comments or whatever the case may be.
Go ahead, Mr. Richards.
Hi, yeah, this is Efren. Yeah, it was a pretty decent turnout today, I thought. I was pretty quiet the whole time, but I just wanted to say good job to you guys for making the decision. There's a quote that I like. It's called, indecision is a thief of opportunity. So even though we've kind of slacked as a community, in my opinion, at least we're now taking steps forward so you can bring this into the community development for their opinion and their vote. Other than that, thanks for not making us come another time to really hear a lot of the same stuff. Really, you guys took some steps forward, so thank you for that. And I'll be here Wednesday as well. Other than that, you guys have a good night. I don't know what else to say.
Thank you.
I think the challenge of, and thank you for your comments. I think one of the challenges we have ahead of us is we've garnered the interest of a Starbucks.
Right.
But we struggle getting the interest of a Starbucks.
Exactly.
And I think as we grow our businesses, we need to keep that in mind.
Starbucks will probably be right behind the
Perhaps,
business.
perhaps.
I believe that, yeah.
Anybody else wishing to address? Is there a motion to adjourn for the Plan Commission?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Plan Commission adjourned. Tony, do you guys need to adjourn? Or?
Yeah.